Hello, students and friends. Um, this is a new series I'm doing, and this is not related to Microsoft 365. It's mostly about what to do if you're a computer science student. In this series, I will all talk about if you're a computer science student, what you need, what you can think about, what are the things you need to focus on, and for what things you need to be prepared. Okay. So in the first video, I will just review the AICTE recommended syllabus, which subjects are important for you, which subjects are most likely to help you in future, and some general talk. Okay. So I have downloaded the uh, semester-wise subjects which are recommended from AICTE for your engineering. These subjects, all of these are you might not be studying in your college, but most probably some of them. So I will just have a brief walkthrough, and I will talk about what are the things you should try to focus on semester-wise. If you look into the first semester, um, it's mostly about physics or chemistry or maths, right? Maths is pretty important, I would say, because it might help you in if you're going to study data science or work in data science in future. So I would say that the maths is something which you can actually read about, but there are no real subjects for computers related in semester one, so it might be a bit boring, right? If you look into the second semester, uh, the number two, business communication presentation skills, is quite important. Quite often you need to present slides or do business communication. So I think this is something you should grasp very early in your engineering. Rest is mostly about physics and chemistry, which is of course is important, but not as much as important as the number 8, that is computer programming and the computer programming laboratory. Okay. And there is something about computer programming which I should mention, is that when you're learning computer programming, you need to write programs on computer and not on paper. So that's a very important. You might not find a computer all the time in your college, or if your college is not providing you laptops or something, but you should strive to write computers on. You might find funny that I'm saying don't write on paper. In our time, when I did my engineering between 2003 and 2007, a lot of people used to actually write on paper, at least in the exam, because we didn't have computers to write exams at that time. So, and the lab is extremely important. You should spend time in lab as much as possible and try to write programs on computer, okay, and not on paper. If you look into the third semester, data structure and algorithm is one of the most important subjects you will study in computer science engineering. Okay, this is a key to everything. What is data structure? Is that how you store data? And this is something I will discuss in some of the next videos. But I just want to mention that this is one of the most important subjects you should focus on. And the fourth one is the computer organization and design, which is also quite important for you to study. If you look into semester 4, operating systems, especially Unix programming. Nowadays, a lot of people don't talk about Unix programming, but it's one of the widest used programming till now. Also, all the Unix or Linux operating systems are quite important. You might find a lot of companies actually work on that rather than on Windows. So I remember learning this pretty early in my engineering, and it was a lot helpful when I actually joined my first company. The sixth is the formal language automation theory, and we used to call FLA in our computer science engineering days. And this subject is a bit tough. You might find a bit tough to study, and to be frank, we were not able to understand this when we studied at that time. And just before the exams, we had to take some extra classes from our professor to understand it again, and we were able to get some parts of it understandable, but not completely. Now when I look at this subject, I think it is kind of important, but maybe not that. But I think if you get this subject correct, it might be helpful for some research study and all. And the next one is to design and analysis of algorithms. This is also very important. As I said before, it is related to data structure algorithm. So it's kind of an advanced stage for that. So you should really understand. And when before you write any programs in your life, you should actually understand to write algorithms, which actually turns into program, later. So that's a key. Computer networks. This is something you should have an understanding of. You might not be a master on this subject, but you should know how the networks work, because this generates a general information or general study for your how the networks, which might be helpful for you when you work with in a company, and there are some situations when there are some problems related to networks, and you should at least understand what they're talking about. So what is a router, what is a modem, how the IP works, IP configuration works, what is DNS, and those kind of things you should understand. Okay, so it's quite so as I said, it's for general information. Okay. The fifth semester, if you look, software engineering, I would say this was one of the easiest papers for me when I did my engineering, actually. But this is something you should understand. You might not be a master on this, but you should understand, because this will be applied in all your life when you work in a company. Compiler design is a tough subject, I would say, the next one, because you need to focus on this is a bit complex to study, but it's very important to understand how a compiler works. My final year project was actually building not building a compiler, but an optimizer of a code, which was very similar to having a compiler actually written. And if you understand this correctly, you might be able to write complex programs in future pretty easily. The next one is object-oriented analysis and design. If you know C++, Java, those are object-oriented programming. So just a bit related to that, and you should know this. Graph theory, artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence was actually not there when we studied in 2003 between 2007, but it is one of the most important subjects, and a lot of jobs are there in this area. And this is something I have studied on my own now after working like 13 plus years in IT world. So I would say this is one of the most key subjects, and you should really understand this clearly. Semester 6, computer graphics visualization, I would say it's important. It's okay, you should learn it. Internet web programming. Yeah, this is in which I think you might learn HTML, CSS, and all, I think, which is quite important. Because that's the basic for developing a lot of web applications, or Android programming and all, so apps creation and those kinds. So you need to learn that. Okay, so that's quite important. Embedded computing systems. If you are interested in working in the embedded systems in future, you there are not a lot of jobs related to this in India. You would get, but it's very important. It's growing very fast in India right now. So you should know this, at least from my understanding point of view, And then we have mobile computing and pattern recognition. This is, as I said, it's only two subjects compulsory, and the rest is elective. So you should choose on your own, but both of them are important, and you should. The semester 8 is, of course, all about project work, and you just should do a very good project in your last semester or your last year. The project should really reflect what you have learned in your college days. I will talk about what I did as a project later in one of the videos, but you should really look at your strength, what you do best. Like maybe you do Android programming good, or you do HTML, or you write programs, a compiler or something. But it should really reflect, because that helps you to really get a job or something. When the people look at your resume, if you're a fresher, then that's the fourth most important thing they might want to know. what kind of projects you have done, in the last semester, and that's quite important. So this is a quick overview, and I'm planning to do a review of each subjects in detail also. But this is the first overview, I would say. So I hope you got some understanding of which subjects are important. I would say that most of the subjects which are related to computer science are important, but there are some key subjects which you should focus on, as I said, which is computer programming, data structure algorithms, object-oriented artificial intelligence, pattern recognition, and compiler, I would say. So those are the things which you should really focus on, also. So next up is about, I think the first two things we discussed, um, which subjects are most likely to help you in future. Um, I would say that artificial intelligence is important. A lot of companies look at cloud computing, but it's not. It's very similar to what you learn in computer programming. Okay, so nothing fancy, I would say. So computer programming, object-oriented designs, and data structure and algorithms, and HTML, basic CSS, and those kind of things. You should be very good at writing C programs, and that I can vouch for, that you should know really. And of course, you should know a lot. These days, company want you to understand, how Android programming works, and also if you take some extra, although this is not included in your syllabus, but you need to touch upon that somehow, which I'll talk about later also. In general, I would say that classes are important in your engineering degree. So don't miss them. Um, Most of the students think that they don't need classes, and they can just bunk, and they don't need to do anything about it. But my point is that if you listen in to your classes in engineering exams, most probably you will learn most of it in the class itself, even though the teacher is reading it from your book. Doesn't matter, it's reading from your book, right? So you need to listen and understand it right away. That way you will save time to do some extra things, which is not in syllabus, which is out of syllabus. So I think it's important that you do that, and don't miss your classes, and just listen to them. Of course, if some professor is not so good and you don't want to listen, it's up to you. You can actually study on your own also. That's not a big deal. But try to attend as many classes as you want. Um, Exams are important. A lot of companies, they filter based on how much number you have got in some important subjects or overall. So if your grades are less, like you don't have a good CGPA, maybe they will not select your resume at all. So you don't get a chance to prove, even if you're a very good programmer or you have done a very fancy project, which you can showcase, or you have a lot of certificates, which you have done. You might not be able to show them because your marks is less and they don't select it. Because in general, they have criteria. Okay, you should have a CGPA of 7, 6.5, 8, or something. Or plus also they have criteria like, okay, you need to have 80% in 10 and plus 2. So that's kind of criteria which might filter you out in the very beginning. So don't let it go. Don't underestimate that your marks in engineering exams doesn't matter. It actually matters, So yeah, so that's it for the first video. In the next videos, I'll be talking more about, in general, how you should study the subjects, some important subjects, and then also what other things you need to do, like how you can make yourself presence felt, before you even do a work in a company, what things you can do to get an internship, or other things you need to do. So yeah, if you like the video, please subscribe, and also you can connect with me on Twitter and LinkedIn. So yeah, that's it in this video. Thanks for your time, and hope you like it. Thank you. Bye.